do its thing.
Thanks, Court.
Cheers. Have a great show.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to start here, Jason.
Should be live. I'm going to check off platforms.
Yep, we're live on X. Confirmed.
Okay, live on X is pretty good.
Live on YouTube.
Okay, I think that's enough for me to get started here. In 3, 2. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. With me again, Alex Trebek, calling in from Jeopardy. No, it's Alex Wilhelm. He's x.com/Alex. He's in Providence, Rhode Island. We're here in the great state of Texas in Austin with Lon Harris in our studio.
Hey, hey.
Hey, shout out to my friends at Capital Factory for hosting us here.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's weekend was great. Awesome.
Yeah, my mom was in town checking out Austin for the first time.
Wow.
Looking for houses.
Package deal.
Yeah.
Mom's here, you're here.
She's on her way.
And you're becoming full Austonian. I saw you were by the lake.
Yeah, we did the riverboat tour. I'd never been on the Colorado, so they take you around. They talk to you about the buildings. You see the baths under the bridge. It's neat.
And you had the big epiphany that Lake Austin and Lady Bird Lake, they're not lakes. It's the Colorado River.
Yeah, they just dammed portions of the river to create these man-made reservoirs. Yeah.
They don't tell anybody that.
No, they let you think it's a lake, yeah. And it's also filthy. I didn't realize how disgusting Ladybird/Town Lake is. It's just drainage. That's where our sewage is going.
Sewage is going in there. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's why there's no boats on.
That's why you can't, like, people are kayaking. It's up too close for me, but don't swim in Lady Bird Lake, folks.
And then up from Lady Bird Lake, there's another dammed area, and that's Lake Austin.
That's Lake Austin. And then there's Lake Travis even beyond that.
And Lake Travis I've been to, that is like at the lowest it's ever been. It's not leveled.
Right.
That's not leveled, but it does level the two below it.
Correct.
And then Lake Austin is cleaner or clean. Sewage doesn't go in there. And that's where all the expensive homes on the lake are.
Right. That's where the nice homes over the lake are.
I did consider the lake life versus the ranch life. We went ranch life. Lake life's a bit intense. There's a lot of boats along there. So my friends who have houses on there, and I've stayed at them many times, basically, Alex, starting at about, I don't know, 6 or 7 a.m., people are literally, I was, in a robe drinking coffee, and there's a guy 10 feet out on the lake.
Yeah.
And he drives by, and you know what he says? What's up, J. Cal? I kid you not. Guy's 10 feet out of the lake.
Not a ton of privacy on the lake. Because, people don't want to go hang out on the ranch on a nice day.
Could have
on
gone
the weekend.
awry because I was in a robe and a robe only. And this guy gave me a shout out. All right, let's get to the program. And what's in the news here, Lon, Alex?
Well, I do want to start us off by talking about this Blue Origin rocket launch. They sent 6 women into space.
Oh, it's all 6 women.
The entire crew is women. This is the first all-female crew to go to space since 1963. The Soviets sent a cosmonaut up, Valentina Tereshkova, in 1963. She went into orbit.
This is a great move I tell you, this is a power move by Bezos because there are very few female astronauts. And there's always been this controversy, like who goes on.
Yes.
And so basically what you're telling me is all these female NASA astronauts who haven't been able to go up have gotten up.
Oh, these were not NASA astronauts. It was Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos's lovely bride.
Fiance.
Yes. Well, it was like a wedding present, I think.
I see. Okay, so she went up with 5 astronauts.
She went up and she had 5 of her lady friends. Aisha Bowe, who is a scientist. Amanda Nguyen, who is also a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and a scientist.
This is great.
Journalist and Oprah friend Gayle King.
Okay.
Film producer Carrie Ann Flynn and pop star Katy Perry.
Okay.
Woo, Katy Perry. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
We do have some images. This image went viral of Gayle King just before. This is when they were walking onto the spacecraft, and Gayle King she's got a little trepidation. People thought maybe she had agreed when this was an abstract, like, hey, you want to go to space?
She looks terrified.
Like, yeah, and then when they were walking onto the space shuttle, she's having second thoughts. And then the moment they got back...
Is that Katy Perry vomiting?
No, the moment they got back, this is right when the spacecraft landed, Katy Perry kissed the ground. She was happy to be back.
Once again, Katy Perry making herself the center of attention.
Of course. Even more, Gayle King let us know that as they were attempting re-entry, Katy Perry treated them all to a little song. Can we play that? Can we play that clip?
We can. Did you play that clip coming up?
Oh, no. Is this like You
This was
baby,
Gayle
you're
King.
a firework.
You sort of think so. Thank goodness nobody was a firework.
Okay.
But the best part was when we got back in our seats after 0 G's, Katie sang, "What a Wonderful World."
She did.
Isn't that nice?
Oh my
she
God.
said, "What a wonderful world. I see dreams." Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
You're in a
Because we've been
spacecraft,
asking
you
her to
can't
sing all
get
the time,
away.
and she wouldn't.
It's a command performance. You can't escape.
Wow.
Katy Perry.
I can't think of anything worse than
Just let us enjoy the moment.
get out to space.
We're looking at Earth, the majesty of the cosmos all around you, and Katy Perry's got to be like, "Hang on, I need to make this moment better."
I mean,
Do you guys
Wow.
want to see it? Do you want to see the launch?
I just want to also just point out, what's her husband's name from Lord of the Rings?
Orlando Bloom.
I just want to shout out Orlando Bloom. Now we all know what this poor man has to go through.
Oh.
I mean, she just breaks out in song and ruins the flight.
I don't know if it ruined, but I feel like
Come on.
I would have wanted to just appreciate the majesty and the
Okay.
grandeur of being in space.
All right, I'm going to defend Katy Perry here. She's a singer. What did you think she was going to do on the way down? Juggle?
I'm just literally trolling. I mean, you could have just, let everybody enjoy.
It's such a
It's a lot.
Like, how many people have ever had that experience of
Sure.
looking at Earth from above? And like, I don't need someone singing.
Oh, my
It's
Lord.
not just to Katy Perry specifically. Anybody.
This has
singing in
ruined
that
it for me. Now I don't want to go to space. Okay.
I will take your seat,
All right.
singing or not.
Oh, I would never go to space. No,
I
we're not supposed to be up there.
A friend
Yes,
of
we are.
mine and I are going to go up at some point when he's ready to go up. We have a group of 4 of us that are going to do something similar to this, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that's spitting in the face of our Lord. We're clear. There's no oxygen up there. Like, that's not. It's an inhospitable place for
All right.
humans.
Well,
We're tiny and fleshy
congratulations.
and-
Okay. Are we going to show the clip of it going up?
Sure, let's take a look.
I have that. Let me just pull it up for
I mean, it's barely, I'll be totally honest with the Blue Origin stuff. You can play it while I talk. Here's the thing with the Blue Origin approach. And listen, amazing job to Bezos of getting this stuff going.
I mean, yeah, they're doing it.
They
They got to space. They came back. Everybody's safe and alive. It worked.
Number one, there's something about his rocket.
What a great moment for feminism this was.
There's a lot going on here. I'll just leave it at that because that rocket, I kind of feel like the design of the rocket is a little bit trolling.
Oh, it couldn't look more Wang-like. There's nothing you could do to make it look more like a Wang.
No, it is literally designed
Yeah.
to evoke a certain, yes, appendage.
Phallic image, yes.
Yeah, I mean, rockets inherently look like penises,
Sure.
and then this one is designed to just look like a circumcised penis.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally. I mean, it's hard to not see that when you look at it.
If
but
people are
what's-
curious, this is a New Shepard rocket. I think this is the 11th crewed flight from Blue Origins. They've been doing this quite a lot. This is not, by the way, the new Glenn, which is their big cargo to space rocket. This is their space tourism rocket. So just
Got
data
it.
points.
All right, I'll just give some credit where credit is due. Absolutely fantastic that we now have a second, really super viable, it seems. I mean, they're a decade behind, but
Yeah.
it's viable. It's nowhere near what SpaceX is doing, obviously, but maybe they're 10% of the way there.
It's just kind of interesting, too, that it's sort of a different framing marketing approach. Like, SpaceX is so focused on transporting. We're going to deliver satellites. We're making deliveries to the International Space Station as cargo. And
Cost per kilo is what they're going
right.
for.
And Blue Origin, they're leaning much more into the space tourism. Like, we're taking celebrities up and we're having these incredible experiences. And I feel like they're kind of branding themselves differently. At this
It was like the Virgin Space, which doesn't seem to have made it. It's,
right. Galactic was that?
Virgin Galactic
Yeah.
doesn't seem to have made it. But, this is entrepreneurship. This is capitalism. Some companies work, some don't. And this is great because we have been talking on this program for 14 years about things like VTOLs, flying cars, right?
Sure.
We've been talking about space tourism. We've been talking about self-driving cars, Waymo, FSD, the DARPA project. We talk about a lot of these things and that they're coming. Drone delivery of food and burritos. It feels like in the last couple of months, a lot of the stuff that was supposedly coming in the next 10 years is actually starting to land.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gail King is not getting on a rocket. She's a pragmatist.
Yeah,
No way she's going up first.
No, I feel like she feels like me, where it's like we're really like,
Yes, you're
why
right
am I
behind her.
testing the odds here?
You're the laggard's laggard on this approach.
I
And
just don't
she's
have
a
a
laggard
strong
too.
desire to go to space. I mean, I'm sure it'd be great once you're up there, but I feel like
let's pull up to make this. I can actually land this plane, so to speak. Pull up the early adopter curve. There's a curve that people in the audience should know if they're founders. And it basically goes, you have the laggards on one side, you have the early adopters on the other. This is Clayton Christensen, classic way of looking at the adoption curve of new technologies. You have early adopters, you have the vanguard all the way out there, standard deviation. And so when you look at this, you got the innovators, right? It's 2.5% of people. Now, these are astronauts, are innovators, right? They're the ones who will come up. They have early adopters. Early adopters will be, right after them, these crazy people who pay $50 million to go on one of these things.
sure.
And then you have the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. What we're seeing here is the early majority is doing spaceflight now. These are not early adopters. This is early majority kind of behavior.
Mainstream kinds of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the equivalent here would be when you looked at the Tesla rollout, innovators were the ones who bought the Roadster. Early adopters bought the Model S. The early majority bought the Model X. The late majority bought the Model 3 and Y. And the laggards still haven't bought electric cars. Or maybe they're buying other brands of electric cars or hybrids, right? Like a Prius or whatever. Plug-in hybrid might be the
They're
laggard.
the Rivian folks, yeah.
The Rivian folks would be, actually, that's correct. Yes, they would be, if you pull up the chart again, they would be like the late majority, I would say. And it's really important to look at that group. Now, when we look at this and we talk about self-driving and Waymos, right now, Waymos is in the early adopters phase. We're not even to the early majority. We only have probably low hundreds of thousands of people who've ever used a Waymo.
Right. And my mom was in town this weekend. Uber offered to send her a Waymo to bring her to Uchi the other night. She said, no.
No bueno.
Not ready.
Not for mom.
She picked Raphael, the Uber driver, instead.
Right. And she's the late majority.
Yeah.
She might be a laggard.
I mean, she will get there.
So then she's a laggard.
Yeah. On her second or third trip to Austin, I guarantee we'll get her in a Waymo.
So this is standard innovation adoption life cycle. If you look at that drone delivery, we're really in the innovators and early adopters.
Right.
We're just going into the early adopters phase. So important for people to understand this. And you have to, there's all kinds of different challenges along that curve, Alex, as you know. You don't have to convince. Robert Scoble's name was invoked on the last episode.
Yes, it was.
Robert Scoble literally would jump on the hood of a Tesla as an early innovator.
Oh, sure.
Literally, if I was driving my Roadster, he literally would jump on and grab the fender to be part of that. He literally, like, if you had a pill that could increase your IQ, and it was like, yeah, we haven't tested it yet. He's the guy who would just take two and be like, all right, test it now. He's that like Jack Black he's the Jack Black of the tech industry, in a way, where he'll just.
But in the most flattering way.
I mean, in the most flattering way. I'm not describing his body type or anything. Just unless you're making a visual.
Wasn't Jack Black in the new Minecraft movie?
He was, and I went to see the new Minecraft movie.
Oh,
it was
you did?
absolutely insufferable. And the week before it, I went to see even more insufferable, the Snow White live action.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not
films,
good buzz on that Snow White movie.
If you were to put these two films together and rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, you'd get to 2.
Jeez.
Wow.
I mean, combined.
I have not seen that Minecraft. It's like
Snow White,
the Napoleon Dynamite director, so that's disappointing to hear.
I mean, I think if you're a fan of Minecraft and you play it, you loved it. It did fan service.
Right.
It didn't work for anybody else, but Jack Black has moments.
And Momoa too, I bet.
And
he's
Momoa,
funny. I
both
like
of them
Jason
are
Momoa.
so charismatic that there were moments I was like, I want to like this. But it was just so much fan service for the game.
And shrill. I feel like watching the trailer, it's got that, like, it's irritating because it's so
But
so
if it's
high
aimed
energy.
at 10-year-olds,
Right. No,
maybe
it's a
that's
children's
exactly, that's what they want. I'm not going to go see it because my kids can't play computer games yet. So
mini
I'm safe.
review. Yeah, mini review. Minecraft. If you play the game, you'll love the film. If you don't play the game, there's no reason to go.
Yeah, you'd be lost.
Snow White. I'm going to give you a take on this. the two lead actresses, Wonder Woman,
Rachel Ziegler
and
is
Rachel
Snow
Ziegler.
White, and then Gal Gadot is
Nobody
the Wicked
cares
Queen.
about any of the woke stuff in this movie. What's terrible about this movie is visually, it looks like it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it was made by Sora or like an AI film.
I felt the same way about Zemeckis' Pinocchio, which debuted directly on Disney Plus, and
Okay.
Tom Hanks played Geppetto in that one.
Yeah.
There's a weird shininess and phoniness and artificiality to the whole world that is off-putting.
And this is where you see it. It felt like you're watching like a Super Bowl commercial, like with the Cheetos or something, where they're putting animated characters, Alex, into a real world, and you have to pick. This is my advice. Either you're an animated film going forward. This is the rule, and I hope Disney's listening. Send this to Bob Iger. You're gonna have to put your foot down. Either you're live action or your animation.
Right.
Enough with trying to do both, because with the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah, they look freakish.
They're not, number one, they're not dwarfs.
That's on Peter Dinklage. When they were first pitching this movie, Peter Dinklage came out and said, don't cast human dwarves as fantasy gnome dwarves because it's offensive, and like we're not that the Snow White dwarves are not like regular dwarves, they're like magical fantasy characters.
Yeah.
So Disney's decision was to heed that advice and make them these like
it's a terrible decision.
monstrosities. And I agree.
I think the film was the terrible decision. Forget the individual casting points. I think it's failing because you cannot blend CGI and humans and make it look good. I'm so tired of these green screen movies. They just never convert that well. And I know that Marvel had its moment for a while there, but they're just going back to the well, even though it's empty. Let it die.
I think it works with superheroes to a certain extent because superheroes are superheroes. Like when I see it's a really interesting point, Alex. When I see Doctor Strange do his thing in the real world, or I see like the Marvel, when I see Iron Man's suit go on him, I kind of buy it. It kind of feels like it's supposed to feel. But in this film, the dwarves look, number one, didn't Dinklage play a dwarf in Game of Thrones? That was known as
his character his character was a little person, yes, who people would dismissively call a dwarf and insult him. But he's saying there's a distinction between fairy tale fantasy dwarves, like a Lord of the Rings dwarf, versus a human being who just happens to be short.
I can speak on behalf of the dwarf community in this regard.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
They've elected you.
If Peter Dinklage can get paid a ton of money to do Game of Thrones, the 7 dwarfs who could have worked in this film should have gotten the job.
I'm sure there were 7 actors who would have loved to get Warwick Davis in there. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so startups.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, we went on a little tangent.
We went on a little Snow
No
White
worries.
tangent.
I let it go, and then I'm going to bring us
there
back.
is a. I can always land the plane for startups. The plane here is these videos. You have to know when to use CGI, and you have to know when to use computer graphics. And Pixar and Lucas have figured this out because Andor looks like $1 million.
So good.
And Mandalorian at times, and the Obi-Wan series at times didn't land.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do.
It feels claustrophobic in Obi-Wan. I think.
The Obi-Wan, they should have gone full.
I'll put the button on this. Sometimes you can see the difference within the same project. Did you see Wicked, the musical film last year?
I refuse.
There are beautiful sets that they built that look amazing. And those sequences really look amazing. It won the Oscar for production design deservedly. But then there are other scenes that they try to do with green screen and it looks muddy and gross. And it's like you figured it out in the movie. The sets look amazing. The green screen does not look
You got to go practical. Blade Runner, original Star Wars, Andor are the models. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's do some news.
Some news, Alex. Come on. Alex, why do you keep derailing us?
Guys, I'm really trying to tighten it up here. All right. I want to start with a couple of quick things. First of all, HuggingFace, everyone's favorite online repository for AI models and compute, has bought a robotics company, which immediately struck me as kind of confusing because why would a startup that does, AI model hosting buy a robotics company? But The company in question is called Pollen Robotics. It's a French robotics company, and they're working on open source robotic technology using AI. So I think the gist here, Jason, is that HuggingFace wants to go from just being the AI, hub and source for the digital world and also become the same thing in the physical world. And I think that's freaking genius.
It's a great idea. This company is doing real world robotics. Do you know what format are they?
Yes, I have an image.
And do we have a video of it or an image? Yeah, let's see the image here.
Reachy, he's called.
So this is Reachy 2. And for folks on the audio version, it's a very basic robot with 2 effectuators, which are little hands. And the gist here is open source research, robotics, and AI. This is not trying to replace a human right now in a manufacturing facility, Jason.
But it is a humanoid robot. It doesn't have legs yet. It's got arms. It's made. So, what's great about this is if the models can have human behavior open sourced into them, the entire industry is not going to be owned by one person, and it's going to move faster. And what AI needs is open source. When a company is in the lead, they are closed. So ChatGPT and OpenAI closed everything.
Right.
They realized they had a fantastic lead. That's as cynical as it gets. You're committed to being OpenAI, and then you close everything down because you can make money.
Right.
That is the most cynical thing you can do. It's basically like completely dishonest to make that flip. And the actual point of OpenAI was AI is so important that everybody should own it. I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
It levels the playing field so every person has access to it. Now, when you open the playing field and everybody has access to a technology, that means the business opportunity and the global opportunity is spread equally. If you want to make a competitor to WordPress, there's WP Engine. And Alex, what was the name of the company that we read the ad for on Twit on Sunday 2 weeks ago?
Oh, remember not Ghost, the tiny microblog or whatever it was.
Yes. No, microblog is the open source one. Anyway, you can get WordPress.com, my friend Matt Mullenweg, and you can pay them to host your WordPress blog.
Sure.
You can pay WP Engine, and then there was this other one that I read the ad for. All of those put pressure on WordPress.com.
Right.
They've had a big back and forth with WP Engine, but anybody can use WordPress. It's awesome. Then you look at what's happening in the AI space. Zuckerberg was so far behind. He said, Alex, hey, the great thing to do is let's open source everything we do. That's called Llama. HuggingFace is a collection of all those open source projects.
Right.
Put into one place, a repository, and you can then pop things up. But what's missing is a company like Tesla that's very far ahead. A company that Waymo is very far ahead in self-driving. Are they open or closed?
Closed.
Closed.
Of course, because they're ahead.
Yeah.
This is what you need to know as an entrepreneur. If you're ahead, do not open anything up because all you're going to do is lose fast.
Right.
If you're behind, open up somebody else's closed. That's what HuggingFace is doing. And by the way, NVIDIA, Alex, you covered an announcement from NVIDIA. You can pull it up and show the video, please. NVIDIA announced, Jensen at his last keynote, that he was going to do an open source and build into the models directly self-driving technology. So now, for every action, there is an equal reaction. You have proprietary language models. That's OpenAI. And I believe Claude and Grok are all closed.
Right.
And they're the top 3, and Gemini's closed. Those are your top 4. And now we have on the other side, Llama and DeepSeek, open source. Then we look at self-driving. You have Waymo closed. You have Tesla closed, as they should. I'm not making any judgment here. I'm a pragmatist and an investor. I'm a capitalist. Then on the other side, now you have self-driving by NVIDIA, and you have this real-world robot for figure AI. To every action, there's a counter-reaction. And that is how the game is played. I advised, as did Bill Gurley, Uber to, and I'm advising them again, this is a message to Dara.
Straight
the message to Dara. Whatever you do, the #1 focus of Uber right now should be to support open source self-driving. Why? Why do I, as a shareholder in Uber still to this day, why am I such a proponent of NVIDIA open sourcing what they're doing? end this open source movement with HuggingFace. And why do I think Uber should back all open source? Why would I do that?
Because they're behind.
They don't have any bets.
Right.
They are putting anybody into Uber's network. So they have Waymo,
Right.
They have WeRide, they've got a bunch of folks. But if open source technology was used for self-driving, think about how many lives would be saved. I mean,
Yeah.
You will pull this technology forward quicker, because then anybody who wants to start an open source company, just like WP Engine and other people wanted to use WordPress, can just start a competitor. What that does is it makes everybody lower prices and move faster because there's competition. Self-driving open source project would absolutely crush.
Well, it makes the most sense. Like self-driving is one of those projects that makes so much sense for open source because it's so much about the data that you're collecting from all these cars on the road. Like if all these companies were sharing everything they're learning every time they go on these rides, we're going to get where we want to go much more quickly.
More of this is what I'll say. For I think on Friday we covered those little robots that drive around delivering burritos.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power move from one of those companies, open source it.
Yeah. Coco and Samo, I think they're called.
Coco and Service Robotics, Jason.
Serve.
Oh my gosh, Serve
No, but
Robotics.
but right, but
Serve
Samo is the name of the little guy who's
Serve
on-
Robotics is the head. Somebody should make a version of that where all the parts are hardware open source. Actually, this is what DoorDash and Uber Eats should do. They should make a hardware project that's open source for those.
Yeah.
Where you just publish all the specs and let anybody make them. And then you open source the software layer and you open source the data layer. So when you run those robots around Los Angeles, you just publish the data. Just open source publish real world data. There's a project called OpenMap, I think. That's the open source mapping project that was created by Gowalla, Foursquare, and a bunch of other people. I believe the founders of those
OpenStreetMap.
OpenStreetMap. Yeah.
Because people were fearing the dependency on Google Maps. And then Apple Maps came out. So they have two competitors. And then OpenStreetMap.org is where you can see an open source project. The next thing that should happen is OpenStreetMap plus these little delivery robots plus NVIDIA self-driving. They should all get together and map out the world with LiDAR and make it free for humanity. Now, that could be a bummer for Waymo and be a bummer for Tesla.
Yeah, maybe.
The margins, because they have other things that make them defensible, the hardware stack, et cetera. And all it will do is move everybody up the stack to work on harder problems, as opposed to keeping all your data for yourself.
Exactly, yeah. The one other thing I would say about HuggingFace that makes this a really interesting thing for me is when I was working on, like when I was first trying out Stable Diffusion, like during that first wave when everybody was really excited about generative AI and I wanted to try it out, HuggingFace is so essential because that would be where all the little things you want to add, it's like a GitHub for working on those kinds of models where anytime you wanted to add like a Studio Ghibli filter or any other, like make me look like a Barbie doll, any of those, you had to download a new model or a new tweak, a LoRa they call it, from HuggingFace.
Yes.
So it's very integrated into the process. So I think that's what they want to do. If you were working on a robotics project, it would be the same thing, like all the little things, all the little coded details that you wanted to add to your project, you would integrate HuggingFace into your workflow. I think that's why it makes sense.
All right, so Jason, well, one thing I want to bring up before we get too far into the show today is a bit of controversy over the weekend. I don't know where you kind of stand on this one, but Jack Dorsey, formerly of Twitter, formerly of Square, now Block and X, he had a tweet that says he thinks we should delete all IP law, and I'm not exaggerating here. His tweet just reads, delete all IP law. And some people came out vociferously against this. Some people were very much in favor. Hot topic. My dad has a couple of patents. And I don't know, we've talked a lot here about the importance of copyright. Is Jack having a moment, or is this something that's a bit more of a normal view in technology than I was thinking?
I saw the tweet. I haven't had a chance to respond because I was literally dealing with the fallout from the All In episode on Thursday, which was the record All In of all time. It hit number 4 in the rankings. We had Larry Summers on, Ezra Klein on. Sachs came back to do a full episode.
Jason,
and it was wild.
Before you go on, I want to say Reddit gives me one of the all-in subreddits, just it shows it to me, and you got shout outs for your moderation skills during that episode in particular. Just wanted you to know that.
Oh, I appreciate that. I would say that is I have gotten more feedback on my moderation of that episode than the top 5 moderation jobs I've ever did. And people said universally I did a great job. The editor, Nick, producer Nick, also did a great job because about 5 times during that, which I don't know if I haven't listened to the final edit, he may have smoothed it out a bit. Did either of you listen to it yet?
Yeah, I've watched.
Was it chaotic when I was telling people, okay, I'm going to go Ezra? There were a number of times where I said, okay, everybody, I'm going to have Ezra go, then you, Chamath, then Sachs will go back to you. Did that get in when I said that?
I believe it did.
Okay.
But yes, Nick made it flow much more smoothly than I think you would have expected.
I stopped the show no less than 5 times. No less than 5 times because 3 or all 4 insisted that they go next.
Yes.
And was the moment where Sachs was like, why am I getting cut off and not allowed to speak? Was that kept in?
No, I don't think.
Okay, he got a little.
Yeah,
that was in there.
I don't think any of the Sachs getting heated stuff.
Sachs was like, why am I not allowed to speak? And I wasn't interrupting him. Larry Summers interrupted him multiple times and wouldn't let him speak, which is new for Sachs to experience because usually people complain Sachs is the one who's interrupting folks. And so I was trying to defer to the guest. Larry Summers is a big guest. Yeah. So I was trying to give him the
Secretary of the Treasury.
Yeah, I mean, president of Harvard. Like it's a legit person, and he's 70 years old. He's
that's why
elder statesman.
To me, this episode felt like a historic, like not to blow smoke up here, but like this felt in particular like I feel like this is actual history. Like in 30 years, when people are talking about this moment,
the tariff moment,
and the reaction to it, because you had this very notable economics expert going head to head against a member of the White House team that is actually instituting this policy, where it's a rare thing to see.
Doesn't exist in the world.
It's a very rare thing.
I think this was dare I say, this was my Frost Nixon moment.
Dare I say.
It was like a Frost Nixon moment, wasn't it?
Well, there is that moment where Ezra.
If the president doesn't, it's not a crime.
There is that moment where Ezra sort of directly challenges Sachs and is saying,
what are the metrics?
Right. What is the actual goal in real metrics that are measurable that we can all look at?
And Sachs wouldn't give it to him.
He hedges a bit, and then Chamath kind of tries to step in and save it. And that, to me, it's like, well, that's very it's a memorable.
And the notable thing about that is, I had said multiple times on the episode, hey, listen, we all know we have to bring back chips. We have to bring back, ships and weapons. We talked to Alex. You and I talked about that on a previous episode. How many chips here? And so, what Chamath described is exactly what the Democrats tried to do in the last.
Yeah, it was mostly the Biden policy.
It is the Biden policy. So you got to give credit there. What Chamath described is what we all agree on and what Biden tried to do with the CHIPS Act.
Right.
And onshoring, I think, chips, rare earths, and some of those, and pharmaceuticals. Putting that aside, at the end, I felt like we had I tried to bring it back to have a little consensus. There are 2 other metrics we could look at. That I added, which is GDP, and the number of jobs that work in high tech. So, Alex, I did a little homework assignment for Wednesday. I'd like you to share with the audience how many open jobs there are for high tech factory work, and how many unemployed people there are who are capable of taking that, and just a general exploration of what do you need to be a high-tech worker in a chip factory? What is the requirement? Because my understanding, and I need to really beef up my understanding here of this, because I haven't heard anybody talk about it. We could talk about it on Wednesday, and then I'll be prepared for Thursday to bring it up on All In. You do a little prep work here for the Thursday All In taping. How many people in America are qualified to do high-tech chip manufacturing, and what degree and or skills do you need to do that? Because my understanding is to work in a high-tech factory, we have so few people who know how to do that in America today that NVIDIA, I'm sorry, TSMC, when they built their fab here, they had to bring people from Taiwan because there weren't any people here.
Really?
I want to try to put some numbers on this and some understanding. If we could find a guest who could speak to this, Alex, this is where Alex really shines because he's such a great meta high-level researcher. Alex, see if you could find that for us, and then the audience can really look forward to Wednesday, us understanding the reality of it, right? What is the reality?
Yeah.
If we do want to have 100,000 people working in chip fabs here and doing high-tech chip manufacturing or putting phones together here or routers, what degree do they need to have? What level of precision do they need to have? My understanding is there's like two pieces here. There's like physical dexterity to build some of these
Look,
components.
this is small. You're working on something.
Yeah. So there's a physical dexterity, but also there is some knowledge that you need to have as well. So it's a very hard one for me to understand.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like it's probably there's got to be different tiers too. I mean, it's a huge team in a big factory. I'm sure some of the jobs are more specialized than others.
Okay. So back to the IP recap. I didn't get to do the IP recap, Alex, because I was literally had so many people complaining and congratulating me over the weekend. And I dedicate the weekend to my daughter. So I was at the Ren Fair.
Oh.
There's a Renaissance Fair east of here.
Oh, I didn't.
And I had such a great plan for the Ren Fair. I was going to do my Triumph the Insult Comic Dog take on the Ren Fair with my phone. And Verizon does not work in Austin.
Too many words there. Verizon does not work. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Punched it up for me. I just want to shout out Verizon. I want to give a preach to Verizon for letting me enjoy the Ren Fair.
So you didn't.
Because if I had access to that, I was so ready. I had like one-liners ready. Welcome to the Ren Fair, where all kinds of unemployed and underemployed individuals come to pretend that they're knights, when in reality, they would have been murdered by the age of 14 at the time of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I was so ready to do. If I literally could live in a parallel universe, the career I would want
Bob Smigel
is to be Bob Smigel.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody send this to Bob Smigel. He must have a charity he cares about.
Yeah, it's it's one of the autism charities. They do their
did you know that, Lon?
I've been to. He used to host this charity comedy show in LA every year, Night of 1,000 Laughs, and it was an autism benefit. And they would like Tenacious D was there.
I just want to point out to the audience how blessed we are here. We have Alex, who can pull up anything in the history of technology and finance and public companies, and Lon, who can pull up anything. This is a message to Bob Smigel. If you will let me man the Triumph dog and do my Triumph impersonation.
There you go. Yeah. Night of Too Many Stars. That's what it's called.
And have that experience with him, like in the field for, I don't know, an hour or two.
Yeah.
What do I need to get a couple of good lands? 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine.
I will give $10,000 to his charity.
There you go.
For 2 hours of him coaching me and allowing me the honor of doing my yes. If he lets me do that, $10,000 ready to go.
The one of those shows I saw, he brought out like the check. You know, they have the oversized check. Here's how much we raised. So they had Robert Wool come on from our list to bring out the check. And he's just ripped him for like 10 minutes.
Love it.
Just, yes, our list. You sucked on HBO for 10 years, man. That's longer than the Clippers.
So back to IP.
Yeah, sorry.
Jack's a friend. He's awesome. I don't know what part of IP he was talking about here is the challenge. So let's break it down. There is IP. Did he say anything in the follow-up tweets?
In follow-ups, it looked like it was about AI. Like the only way we are going to compete with the Chinese is if we get over this obsession with copyright and
yeah,
IP
okay. That's what I thought.
That seemed to be where he was coming from to me.
It is when you are a billionaire and you've made all your money in software and building software, and you're in the technology industry, you very quickly lose any respect for, if you had any to start with.
Right, yeah.
For artists. In Silicon Valley, people think artists are to be used because artists are so dumb that they've built all these platforms. The platforms aggregate all the value. And YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok laugh at how stupid artists are for letting them build $1 trillion, $100 $100 billion, $10 billion franchises off the backs of content creators. Content creators are dumb. And content creators need to show these platforms exactly that they're not dumb. And what they should do is get together, Mr. Beast, I don't know, Charlie XCX, I don't know who the biggest
Colin and Samir.
Well, they're not huge. I'm saying the ones who actually drive.
All the TikTok influencers.
The top 25 TikTok influencers and Mr. Beast and 25 other people should leave those platforms. Now that now that software is so easy to build with AI, they should stick it to them. Leave those platforms and premiere their stuff on their own platform. That gives 100% of revenue or 95% of revenue.
It's tough though. I mean, there have been groups that have tried to do this.
Number one,
the Try Guys was a sort of an infamous example. They built up a huge audience on YouTube. You know, the Try Guys, they were on BuzzFeed originally. It was just, they'll go out and try any crazy thing one time.
It can't work with one person. It has to be a consortium of the top 10.
Yeah, they sort of tried to break off and do their own. And like, we have seen that, I think, I'm blanking on the name. What's that? Dropout. The College Humor guys went and built their own subscription platform.
Okay, sure.
Their Dropout does okay.
Okay. Alex, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think you need to mix in a record label too, because that way you can get all the music off. If you do, because I feel like right now the reporting circle between music comes out, YouTube ranks of views and revenue kind of goes back in the music industry is a hard thing to break. But I think that would be clutch. So creators, some artists, a record label or two.
Anyway,
do it.
There's a very simple way to do it, which is, hey, we're going to put 50% of our content on the platform we own. We'll keep 50% on the existing platform. And every time we'll say, watch the follow-up or the behind the scenes at this new place. And if there was a consortium that did that, you could actually teach a lesson to the technology industry. I'm not singling out Jack here. This is like pervasive. Zuckerberg would be the bigger version of this. But Jack himself owns Tidal and he's friends with Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar. Go ask Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z if they think that somebody should be able to take their music and put it for free on the internet. Right? And then what that would do to the culture if those people couldn't make money.
Right.
And then, I saw Elon retweeted it, and Elon, in fairness, has exposed all of the IP, all the patents for not self-driving, for a lot of Tesla's patents. But as we just said in the earlier segment, I don't think the self-driving stuff is open source.
Right.
So, people, again, are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. Jack owns Tidal, right? It's still owned by Square, I believe.
By Block, yeah.
By Block. Okay, if he feels that way, then go to Jay-Z and go to Kendrick Lamar and ask them if they're cool with all their IP being free.
Right.
IP for thee and not for me.
Right.
IP for me and not for thee. Right? Like, you need IP. If you don't have IP, then the whole thing collapses.
Because even Jay-Z and Kendrick, like, their songs are also on Spotify and YouTube. They're not exclusive to Tidal.
No.
Because they can't.
And they get paid.
Right. Well,
and
pennies.
No, but they have made that arrangement. They could not be on there. The major artists could make the decision to not be on there.
Right. Neil Young for a time pulled all of his stuff from everywhere.
Absolutely.
But Pono, his particular Pono, his
producer. And also Taylor Swift, right, Alex? Taylor Swift pulled off of Spotify for a period of time.
Yes.
And I thought actually, and I got into it a little bit on Twitter with Daniel Eck about it. I was like, she's an artist. If she doesn't feel she's getting paid the right amount, if she doesn't feel that Spotify's treating her well, she should take herself on there. That's the nature of IP. Artists need to be protected. If China doesn't protect IP, I don't like what Sam Altman and Jack and other people are doing here. I think it's dirty. I think it's a really dirty move to say, because the Chinese are thieves, that we're not going to be able to compete. And we as Americans should hold a higher standard.
Right.
And I believe this in IP. I believe it in due process. I believe it in many different spaces. You don't get to take the low standard China has for IP or the low standard that El Salvador has for human rights and due process and then apply it to America and say, and point to those bad actors and say, that's what we should do. What else is in the news?
I was just going to throw one more thing in there. Josh Wolf from Lux Capital says, Jack may be smart. This is his stupidest take ever. And I just want to say that other VCs, Jason, are on your side here.
But like I said, I don't understand his intent here exactly, right? And so I have to talk to him first before I actually understand. Sometimes people make tweets and they're, they do have a point. Like and he has a choice here. If he truly believes this, and he's a billionaire, he should start a record label. He should go give his money to Jay-Z, buy him out of his record label and tell Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar, who are friends with him, I want to pay you to make your music and offer it for free to the world on Tidal. And I'll allow anybody to use it and remix it however they want, and I'll pay you for it. Like, come up with a better model if you want to break the current one. But if not, then I don't think you have a leg to stand on. And they're
agreed.
Open source Jay-Z's music. He can go to Jay-Z and say, I'll buy. Jack has enough money to go buy Jay-Z's catalog.
Right.
Go buy Jay-Z's catalog and open source it and give it as a gift for free to the world. And let anybody sample it and use it however they want.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do that.
Okay, let's move on to the next story.
All right. One thing we've been talking about on the show a lot is lack of exits. Jason, in the first quarter of this year, we saw some IPOs, we saw some M&A activity. It
was going great.
Yeah, it was going great. Things have changed a little bit in the last couple of weeks. But one thing that
did something happen?
I think something happened, and then it didn't, and then it did, and then it didn't, and then it partially did, then it doubly did, but then also didn't. It's been very confusing. Anyways,
how dare you say something happened? Everyone knows it didn't.
Tariffs are over 100% on China law, and that's definitely different. All right, so there's a group called Setter. They're a secondary trading platform, Jason, and they released their Q1 report showing the most in-demand secondary companies. And I wanted to share this to everybody because there's a bunch of Twist 500 companies on here, but also I think it's an interesting look at what VCs are trying to scoop from the secondary markets, which is a key place for liquidity these days. Now, at the top of this list, there's some names you kind of expected: SpaceX, Anduril, Anthropic, but then there are some surprises. xAI ranked higher than I expected it was going to, given its youth. Figure AI, the humanoid robotics company, Jason. Grok with a Q is on there. OpenAI ranks under Stripe with 6th and 7th place. I thought this was a fascinating list.
Anthropic is at 61 billion. Is that the share price or is that the market cap? Let's see. SpaceX 350. That's the market cap.
Last public round, last private round that we know of the valuation publicly.
Got it. Okay. EV. Expected value, last round expected value, I think is what they mean by EV there.
Yes.
So there are tons of these secondary markets. It's kind of like a little bit of gray. There's some weird stuff going on here. Stop scrolling it, please. Just leave it at number 1. And so if we were to look at this, Anduril at 28 billion, SpaceX at 350, and Figure at 39 billion. Figure at 39 billion does not make a lot of sense to me. That's a pre-revenue company, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the one that stands out. I mean, xAI does have some revenue and it owns Twitter, so it has billions of revenue there. So that makes sense. Defense tech, they have billions in revenue. Anduril, SpaceX has billions. Stripe has billions. OpenAI has 10 billion. Grok is crushing it. So when I look at these, the only out of the top 10 that stands out to me here as maybe you would debate is Figure AI. Just so you know how these are driven. Secondary markets here are driven not by venture capitalists, but by high net worth individuals.
Right.
And so if you're a high net worth individual, I can go on these and I get pitched on them all the time. And I can buy these, pay massive fees, like typically maybe 5 to 10% to buy them, and then a 20% carry or a 10% carry, or you may just buy them without carry. And when I go buy $1 million worth of Anduril, and I own about 7 million worth of Anduril right now. I'm joking. My guy Bomber Lucky. If you were to go buy $1 million worth of Anduril on this, you're going to pay like $150,000 or $100,000 in fees to get in there.
Wow.
So it's a bit of a racket. A lot of founders don't like this, and they don't like that these markets are doing this because it just creates a bit of chaos for them.
How much of this do you think? Because like you said, this is not VC driven. This is just individuals who have the money to throw around. How much of these do you think is driven rather than based on the fundamentals of the companies by their notoriety and prominence in the culture? Because I can't help but notice a lot of the companies near the top of the list, they're brands that are recognizable in the world. Your Stripes, your OpenAIs, your ByteDances, your Neuralinks, they're all famous companies.
I would say the panache, the patina, the branding is but 20% of this.
Okay.
It is playing a factor, but a lot of this is cause and correlation. So the reason some of these are famous, like SpaceX and Stripe, is because they've been private for so long. Both of those have been private for well over 10 years now. Alex will give us the exact numbers. Those two companies have been private for a long time, which means they have a large number of shareholders. They've got a large number of shareholders because they have so many employees. Employees vest over 4 years typically. If a company like Stripe is 12 years old, you might have an employee who has had 3 different grants, a 4-year grant, a 4-year grant, a 4-year grant. Maybe they've had, if it's a really high-performing employee, maybe they have 4 grants where they overlap. Somebody told me when NVIDIA was private that like Jensen would just drop extra shares on people. He had like a pool of shares that he had like God power on. He didn't have to go to the board or anything. He would just be like, you did a great job. Boom, I'm doubling your shares. And he wouldn't even do it. He'd have somebody go do it for him.
Wow.
So he was just like dropping these kind of things on people. But there's many, many sellers in these companies because they've been private for so long. A company like Figure AI, they raised this round. And I think Ruloff did a tweet about how SPVs were ruining the industry because there were no lead investors. Alex will find it because Ruloff does tweet, but once a month, I think, or maybe once a week. He's a man of few words, but when he does say something, it's going to be very important. And I think this is kind of a subtweet. I haven't spoken to Ruloff about it. I'm obviously friends with Ruloff. Ruloff, when he said this, at the same time, I was getting pitched on Figure AI at 30, 40 billion. And here's the tweet. We remain debt. Okay. Could somebody read it for me? Because I can't.
Go for it, Alex.
We remain destined to repeat the mistakes of the past. SPVs are making a comeback where the lead investor speaks for less than 10% of the capital, yet eagerly lines up the latest set of tourist chumps who think the story will end differently this time. It's only been 3 years, head exploding emoji.
I think he's talking about Figure AI here. At the same time he made this tweet, people, I understand, were trying to lead Figure AI's round at a reasonable valuation, say 10 billion. And listen, this is no shade at the founder and the team over at Figure AI. They should go for the greatest, valuation they can get, as is their right.
That's
it's a marketplace. However, it is a pre-revenue company. When pre-revenue companies that have serious competitors are raising at a very high valuation, that is going to get the knives out. And it's going to get more than the knives, actually. You will get a little haters on the margins. The microscopes come out. And the microscopes today are not the microscopes of yesteryear. It's not a spyglass. This is one of those scientific microscopes, like, at Stanford that really get in there. Yeah. And then you're going to start getting the real colonoscopy going on here. They're going to really examine this company and say, if this company's worth 39 billion, it's pre-revenue. What are the details of this? And they're going to start getting very granular into justifying that. And, the VCs could be a little upset that some person they consider a knucklehead offers them 40 billion when, let's say Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz had offered to fund this thing at 20 billion. And they really were going to give them credit. Like, okay, you have zero revenue. In my understanding, somebody fact check me, please, that I heard they were pre-revenue. Maybe I think they had a BMW deal.
I have context on that, Jason. Let me share that really quick.
Please fill me in so I make sure I get my notes correct.
So this is from a story about the $40 billion valuation round that you're referring to and how it's coming together. There's mention in this piece about SPVs, people getting it in for as little as 100K, and essentially what appears to be, from what I can tell, a hunt for capital at that price. But the thing that I wanted to highlight is details are a little bit vague and the company likes to talk. So quoting this Wall Street Journal post, in a March 31 post where he shared a video of the slender humanoids working on assembly tasks for BMW, the CEO wrote, "This isn't a test. This is what autonomous robots in production operations look like." Later, a BMW spokesman said that the automaker had 3 of the robots at its facility for a technical evaluation. So to me, there does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect between promise and reality. He's getting a little ahead of his skis, and that makes this entire thing to me a little sketchy. Although I will say it is a Twist 500 company, so I don't want to be...
Listen, there's no doubt it's a great company. It's no doubt that they are one of the top 10 robotics companies, I think, probably pursuing the space, and they've cashed up. Here's the challenge. We've talked about this countless times. If you oversell something while selling shares.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nicola. People can, consider that to be securities fraud.
Right.
Now, the distance between the 2 statements you just read us, I will give my judgment. This will be an official judgment. I need to hear the first statement again from the CEO. And I will tell you if this is securities fraud or not.
The CEO Adcock wrote, quote, "This isn't a test. This is what autonomous robots in production operations look like. Turn the music up, exclamation point."
Okay. This is not, what did he say? This is not.
This isn't a test.
This isn't a test.
Yeah.
Okay. This isn't a test.
And then BMW says.
And now let's listen to the BMW quote. So one saying this isn't a test. And BMW said.
I'm just going to pull this back up on screen. A BMW spokesman said on April 1, the automaker had 3 of the robots at its facility for technical evaluation. Quote, "Only one is used at a time, but the robot has practiced picking up and grasping parts during non-production hours in our body shop," the spokesman said. The following week, the BMW spokesman said that he had received an update from colleagues at the plant and that there were now more than 3 robots on site. He said they were being used in non-production and live production situations.
Pretty close. It's a this is a bubble case for sure.
This is definitely a bubble case.
Yeah.
Because he said this is not a test.
Right.
Then the BMW spokesman explains exactly a test.
Yeah. I think that they came back and said we're using it on both live production and non-production.
And then in the last one, he got saved.
Yeah, that's the distinction that really matters.
The final words
Yeah.
save him as not guilty. Give me the final words again. The final part of that statement from BMW, the cleanup.
Right. That it feels like that was afterwards that they were like, oh, we gotta.
I'll tell you, they had not even throw him a bone. When they saw that BMW quote, the lawyers at Figure or the lawyers at BMW or somewhere in between, some counsel probably said, "Wait a second.
Yeah.
Our understanding is this is not a test. You just said it's a test. We're raising money at a $39 billion valuation, saying you're our key customer.
Yeah.
Can you please make sure that what you say is accurate in the press?" The final sentence will be
The following week, the BMW spokesman said that he had received an update from colleagues at the plant and that there were now more than 3 robots on site. He said they were being used in non-production and live production situations.
Right.
Okay. Now they're in live production situations, which means not a test. So, not guilty. This is not securities fraud. But the reason I am harping on this, and I don't want to create another Parma Lucky situation here.
No, man.
A CEO is really upset.
Brad Adcock watching this right now, like,
no, the point I'm just trying to make here is a partner can say something out of school, like BMW is their #1 customer.
Right.
This raise is happening because of that BMW relationship. When you look at those SPVs, the people investing in the SPVs are investing because they're seeing those tweets from the founder.
Mm-hmm.
If the founder tweets, this is not a test, and then BMW says it is a test, then the person who bought the shares at $39 billion can get a lawyer and then say, "Hey, I want my money back because you said it wasn't a test. BMW said it is." That is the ultimate way you can buy shares in a company with an option to get your money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the BMW person says, no, it's in production, now you have no recourse. The CEO said it's not a test. The person from BMW said, we're not testing it, it's in production. Then you have no case.
Right.
And you have to understand, there are bad actors out there as well. As a founder, there are bad actors who will take every single thing you say on Twitter. And there are lawyers who'd be more than happy to have a big targeted company with a big valuation and $1 billion or $10 billion in cash, and they will go dunk on them. So and if you're taking money from civilians through these SPVs, which is Roelof's point, to tie both points together, Alex, Roelof is explaining those people are not making economic decisions the way VCs do, which is to get returns for LPs like Harvard or Ford Foundation or CalPERS and retirement funds. They're not, and sovereign wealth funds, they're not making economically sound decisions at all times. They're making decisions based on emotions, based on how, as you said, how high profile is the company. So if a founder is out there increasing the profile of the company, which is the job, and you take money from Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz, they're not going to sue you. They're professionals. They know, they pay,
Right.
they've done the math, they've penciled it out, they've made hopefully a thoughtful decision. Civilians are like YOLO 100K.
Right.
Then you get 100 YOLOs and you raise 10 million, and then there's 5 other SPVs doing that same thing.
Right.
Man, this really does complicate things. We run SPVs at thesyndicate.com all the time at a very small scale. The average one is $700,000. We're putting money into seed stage companies, not late stage companies, which is where like the average check size in ours is 7K.
Mhm.
And you are YOLOing. We say that.
Yeah.
Only invest money you can afford to lose. These are typically companies that are either pre-revenue or have a small amount of revenue, hundreds of thousands a year, low millions. I'm actually in the SPV business as well as the fund business, but primarily the fund business. So yeah, interesting. This is a very interesting situation. Be careful out there, folks.
Yeah.
Be careful out there. And also, I think SPACs and SPVs are things that people should use if they're incredibly sophisticated in very rare circumstances when they make sense. Not if you're a dentist.
You know, there'll be, out of these SPACs, there will be a FedEx, an Amazon. There'll be some great company that comes out of this. These SPACs, you just have to assume an 80% failure rate. Now, when I say 80% failure rate, I mean a 0.
Yeah.
Lose all your money.
Right.
I would like for Friday's show, Alex, I'll put you on another assignment here if you don't mind.
Get
Not
this
at all.
down. Get this
Friday's
down.
show,
Take
I'd
notes.
like you to take the 10 best performing SPACs. And they go out at $10 typically each, so it's pretty easy to do this. Go find the spectacular parade of companies, and let's run through the top 10.
Yeah.
In other words, the 10 that have either lost the least. It might be a case of who lost the least.
Right. Yeah.
That's how bad this cohort has done. But
Yeah.
it could be ones that are trading above their SPAC price.
Mhm.
So let's see the ones that are trading above the top 10 above the trading price, and let's go through them from first principles and just say, is there a pony in there?
Yeah. I don't
Oh,
think
wow.
Virgin Galactic's going to make the top 10.
No, I mean, come on. Space travel,
made.
space tourism. When I saw that one come up, I was like, that's a Hail Mary. If you're betting on that, you should expect it to be 1 in 250.
Yeah.
Now, if you're betting on Joby, I would take it from 1 in 250 down to 1 in 50.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I do for a living, is to make these assessments. It's taken me a lot of pain and suffering to get that skill.
Right. Yeah.
Man, there are so many
A lot of
companies-
lessons learned along the way.
There are so many companies, Lon, that I thought were going to do so much better that
Yeah.
went to 0. And there are so many that beat my estimations unbelievably that I would have put behind those other companies, man. There's so much randomness in this.
Yeah.
And the randomness is really the founding team. Okay.
Oh, man.
What else is in the news?
Um,
Or we can go to founders.
Should we do more news?
I
or-
think we should go to founders now because we have quite a lot there from Lon. But I
Yeah.
just want to say on the SPAC front, I had a name in mind, Jason. You said what are the best performing ones? And so I pulled it up just to kind of start my research. It's trading at $10.76 per share. Dang it. So it's going to be a short list. Anyways, Lon, let's go.
So then it will be who lost the least.
Yeah, it's going to be that.
No, there's probably some $7, $8, $9 ones. Let's look at those. 'Cause
Quite
actually,
possibly,
those
yeah.
would be sleepers. I might put a J trade in.
All right. We'll have that for Friday.
Thank you, sir.
So I found some fun videos on social media that directly relate to found up starters. We call these startup insights. I found a really good one this morning from David Heinemeier Hansen, friend of the show.
Oh, DHH.
Our old friend DHH. This is from his a recent episode of his Rework podcast. He talks about the inherent contradictions in being a founder. So
The inherent contradictions in being a founder. Go.
so let's take a look at that clip. Start us from the beginning.
Let's go in assuming it's going to work. If we're going assuming it might not work, you know what? You're not going to put your all in to it. And if there's anything you need these days, it sure as hell is your all in. Everyone else is putting in their all in, their best thoughts, their best competence, all this stuff into it. You can't show up half-assed and then expect that there's going to be a prize for you. That just doesn't work. And you actually need that conviction because you're going to have sort of a dip in motivation of like, oh, I think it's not going to work. Oh, this is a great idea. Oh, this is a stupid idea. Like, it's going to fluctuate, right? So you need to go in with that conviction, like whether it fluctuates, whether it go up and go down, I believe this is going to work. And then also, again, knowing it probably won't. It probably won't. And when it then doesn't or does, you're going to be happy either way because you did it in a way where you did it with integrity regardless of what that means to you. You're not doing it in a slimy way. You're not doing it in a quick, scammy, make a buck kind of way. You're doing it in a way where you go like, you know what? I can put my name on this. If there was a little box, a little plaque, I proudly write, made by David on it so people knew who made it. I'm not going to be hiding behind something here. I'm going to make something I'm proud of because that's just going to make me feel good about it. I also think it works in the market when you're authentically excited, enthusiastic, and integral about what you're building. And then I'm going to build it in a way that if it does not work, I'm going to be better now than I was when I started.
So never speed up his videos. Sorry about that. That was 1.25 and that was a mistake.
Already sped up. They're pre-sped up. So I thought this was a really interesting sort of insight. And it reminded me a little bit of that Rick Rubin book, the Creative Act that we like to talk about,
sure.
Where it's making something that you feel proud of regardless. That's how he recommends getting out of this sort of contradiction, is as long as you are happy with the work that you did and it's something you're proud of and you're happy to put your name on it, it doesn't matter at the end so much whether it works or not. And I like that approach.
Yeah, David's been through the ringer, and he makes a couple of really solid points here that you have to keep in mind. If you're not fired up with enthusiasm, you're going to be fired with enthusiasm, right? It typically refers to employees, but in general, you shouldn't do a project unless you really have that all in. You notice he mentioned all in many times. Like the reason I named the podcast All In, is for a reason. You do need to be dedicated and you need to be all in when you're going for a startup. Why? As he points out, it's a roller coaster. And you do need to recognize I'm going all in with the understanding that there's an 80 or 90% chance of failure. But no matter what happens, I put my name on the back of it. And Naval was on All In a couple of weeks ago. He sat in the SAC seat and he talked about the social network he created for himself. I forgot the name of it. I had it on my phone. They sold it. He spent a lot of time on it. And basically, it was going to be an audio version of Twitter where you have conversations on there, and it would be more thoughtful. What was it called?
AirChat.
AirChat. Thank you, Alex. And AirChat was pretty cool. And he said, he tried. He wanted to do something important in the world. He wanted to feel like he was doing something of substance. He sees Elon, he said, and he feels like pathetic sometimes that he's not making something and he's got to go do something that he really feels. And he put his name on AirChat. He was on it constantly. I had conversations with him on it. And you know what? Social networks are like the lightning in a bottle of all lightning in a bottles. Like you literally put 1,000 bottles out, lightning hits one of them, and the other 999 shatter. And his was one of the 999 that shattered, but he said he felt really good about it. And I think that's one of the things to keep in mind. It's a great quote from David Hammer Hansen, friend of the pod.
Alex?
I just want to say, I really want him to follow me around and kind of keep me in line. I feel like if I ever slacked off, he'd be like, you're not. All right. Sorry,
listen, you got a beautiful blazer and crisp shirt on today. I feel good about it. I got Lon halfway there, so we're halfway to being figured up.
I'm close.
We're 5 out of 6. You look great.
To avoid forgetting to have the shirt ready, I literally laid them all out and put the iron on top of them before I got ready for work, so I wouldn't have the wardrobe malfunction.
It's great. No wardrobe malfunction here, please.
Yeah, we got one more.
Nobody needs to see that from any of us.
In honor of Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin's big day, we got one more clip here. This is from last year's New York Times Deal Book Summit. And here is Jeff on overestimating risk versus underestimating opportunity.
I think and underestimate opportunity. I think it's generally human nature to overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity. And so I think entrepreneurs in general would be well advised to try and bias against that piece of human nature. The risks are probably not as big as you perceive, and the opportunities may be bigger than you perceive. The second thing I would point out is that, thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, this is something I actually had a conversation with Elon about on his plane 15 years ago. He was working on Tesla and was trying to get a CEO, and he was just saying people always overestimate the downside risk. It was the way he phrased it. That always stuck with me. And it is true. If you fail spectacularly, nobody remembers. You remember. You think it's a big deal. You will think about it constantly. It's the equivalent of somebody going to a party and literally trips and falls.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ruminate about that. Rumination, right? And rumination is a real blocker for success in life. Obsessing and ruminating just means thinking over and over again about something. Mm-hmm. And when you ruminate over your perceived failings of yourself, you will then start to feel worse about yourself and you'll over-index on it. And what I have learned is that it's much better to celebrate all of the victories, even the little ones. So we've been sitting here as we build out the studio, and I've been celebrating the little victories. Oh, we got the lighting better. Oh, we got the flags up. Oh, we now have this OLED. Oh, we got a better shot over here. Oh, Alex is wearing a collared shirt, not a t-shirt on the blazer. Great. You know, it's just all the little tiny things. Oh, Lon got his beard trimmed. He doesn't look like Lon didn't get pulled into the homeless shelter.
Yeah, nobody from St. David's tried to give me any soup this morning.
And so take a minute. Now, that's the perfect example. We never told the story on air.
We did. I think we did.
No, it's worth telling again.
All right. Well, I park next door to where Capital Factory is a church, and they do their charitable. Yeah. So there's a line of unhoused people outside in the morning.
Unhoused.
Yeah. You say unhoused.
I like it. I like it. It's very compassionate.
They're waiting for food, blankets, socks, whatever they're giving away.
Well, they have socks.
And so, I walk by them as I'm coming to Capital Factory in the morning, and there was a guy who was graciously clearing a spot for me in line because he assumed I was one of those people.
I mean, when you let that beard go wild,
it can get a little crazy.
Indicator that So we could over-index. No, seriously. Great example.
I get what you're
in your mind, you could over-index like, oh my God, do I look like a homeless person?
Yeah.
Or you can get trimmed up, put on the collared shirt and say, you know what? And I look great today.
Yeah.
Like you can make a conscious choice to do either of those two things.
It's a thing I've worked on in therapy a lot.
You have?
Sure. Oh,
okay.
that your perception is that everybody's staring at you constantly and obsessing over you, but actually no one is ever thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves.
Spotlight syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is a helpful thing to remember, because I do sort of, I feel like insecure social anxiety, and you just got to get over that because nobody's actually looking at you.
Let's turn this around. So Jason, what you just described is something that I actually personally struggle with. Like I'm a big ruminator I didn't know that. Okay. I'm an insecure introvert. I just pretend. I'm curious about you though. Like, how do you avoid rumination? Like personally?
Oh yeah. So it's very simple. I am super self-aware, and I've always said, like, I'm a kid from Brooklyn who somehow figured out at a very early age how to start his own magazine and be an entrepreneur because I was unmanageable. And nobody taught me anything about entrepreneurship except watching my dad run a bar, which was chaotic. And I built a mythology for myself. And my mythology was, hey, the kid from Brooklyn did okay. I was going to be a cop. The expectations were incredibly low. And my Lord, out of the gate, I started to exceed them. And now I still champion that mythology for myself, which is, can you imagine a kid from Brooklyn became a millionaire, has everything he always wanted, has a beautiful family, has great friends, and can do whatever he wants in life, has 2 of the top podcasts in the world, and it gets to ski in Japan. And I take the time to just appreciate how much further I am from the expectation people had for me. And I went into my college counselor, my high school counselor at Severian High School in Brooklyn. This is why I don't donate money to Severian High School. Specifically because of this instance and others. And they ask me every year, and in the famous alumni glass thing they have,
sure,
they have Chris Mullen, and then somebody told me they had me and a story about me.
There you go.
Where they, just talk about famous people at my high school. Severian High School.
You're a notable alumni.
I'm like the number 2 notable alumni. If you look at the people who went there, Chris Mullen, Olympian, incredible NBA player, J-Cal. Okay, very flattering. I'm still not buying you. They pitched me on building the computer science wing with Jason Calacanis. They asked me for $10 million or something.
Oh, wow.
I've given them $0 for,
Oh, you could have the Calacanis Memorial Library.
Basically, yes. And I'm just like, no.
$10 million?
Whatever. They wanted
for
millions
high
of dollars.
school, that
they
feels like a
literally
lot,
pitched me
right?
on doing all this. And, listen, when I went to the person who was the college counselor, I said, they said, well, what are you thinking? And you were required to go twice. That was the requirement.
Yeah, no, my school had a similar thing.
So I went to there. This is when I'm a sophomore or junior. And I said, well, I read about Brown. I read about Brown.
Good school.
And in Brown, you can make your own degree. And I'm really interested in computers and I'm really interested in psychology. I was wondering if there's anything where you could have like the psychology associated with technology.
What a forward-thinking major that would have been.
This is the age of 15 years old, 16 years old. Do you want to know what the guy did? He laughed in my face.
Really?
Yeah.
He laughed at me.
Why?
And he went,
what was Brown super
Jason.
outside of your, like, what was your GPA?
2 point something. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, that's a little low.
3, whatever. Anyway, he laughed in my face. He says, there is no way you would ever get in there. Have you taken the police officer's test?
Oh, that's not very nice.
Or the firefighter test?
You should encourage somebody's
Chips
dream.
on shoulders, put chips in pockets.
This motherfucker, bleep that, did not even for a second. He could have just said for but 60 seconds. It's really interesting. Where did you hear about Brown? How did you hear about it? Do you know what have you looked into the requirements to get into Brown? Is there a second place you could go that maybe you could do a year or two and then get into Brown?
That's the approach. It's like what other schools have interesting programs aligned with what you want to study that you could get into and then transfer to Brown.
So he gives me this, this nag, and I just thought to myself, and this is when it became JCal versus the world, or it was
did you a favor.
Yeah, in a certain way. And I had started to take martial arts and run marathons, and I started to get my chutzpah up. And I was like, you know what? If everybody thinks I'm not going to make it, I'm going to just prove it to them. I started to get a little chip on my shoulder. And so I went on my own, and I figured out, I could go to Fordham University. I knew some friends who were in Fordham, in Jesuit school. And so I started going up, and my friend was at Fordham, and he was teaching the Taekwondo program there, the Taekwondo club, and I was in the Taekwondo club at Severian High School. So I started going up there every couple of weeks, and I met with this guy. The counselor there was Edward M.J. Boland. I got to find out where he is now. Somebody can find him if they can. I want to send him a gift basket or something, or just say hi to him. And I started going to his office because I had applied for admission to Fordham, and Edward Boland was the guy there, and they sent me a letter and said, you didn't get in. But I had set up a tour with him. And I said to him, hey, I had set up a tour, but you rejected him. He goes, oh, well, the tours have nothing to do with the acceptance. You didn't get accepted because we have people with higher SATs and higher GPAs. I said, oh, so I can't take the tour even. He goes, no, come up and take the tour. So he met me, he took the tour, I took the tour. I said to him, any chance I can get in, and he said, well, traditionally we don't take a student like you. And I said, well, what about non-traditionally? And he looked at me and he's like, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he said, well, where have you been accepted? I said, Brooklyn College. He said, I'll tell you what courses to take at Brooklyn. If you get straight A's and you do really well, then we'll consider you for a sophomore.
Sure.
I said, great. I hammered this guy. I brought him 3 letters of recommendation 3 months in a row, and I dropped them off in his office. I literally went to his office unannounced. Hey, Mr. Boland, it's Jason Calacanis. And he looked at me, he didn't recognize me. I said, I came last month. Remember I had that you guys rejected me. You told me Brooklyn. I said, yeah. I said, I did really well. Here's my report card for my senior year. And here's a letter of recommendation from a place where I had a job. He said, oh, that's great. What are you doing here? He's like, I'm like a Taekwondo thing. He said, oh, you with your friend from the psychology school? I said, yeah. He said, oh, that's great. Nice seeing you. Next month, Mr. Boland. He's like, you're back. I'm like, yes. He's like, another recommendation letter? I said, yeah, I gave it to him. I get a call on August 10th. Never forget it. My mom says, Jason, Fordham's on the phone. I run to the phone. I said, Mr. Boland, hey, how's it going? And I give him a 3rd letter. He said, I never told the story on the air. He said, Jason, I wanted to let you know I'm leaving Fordham University.
Oh, no.
I said, fuck me.
You put in all that legwork, yeah.
Put in all that legwork. I lost my rabbi. Yeah. He's gone. I said, oh, I'm sorry. What happened? He said, oh, I got a job at Yale. I said, you got a job at Yale? He said, that's a better school than Fordham. He said, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I said, congratulations. He said, yeah. And I had one request for Fordham when I was leaving. I said, oh, what's that? He said, I wanted the most promising non-traditional student to get in.
Oh,
I said, who did you pick? I swear to God, that's what I said. He said, you dummy. I said, what?
You.
He said, yeah, you're in Fordham. I said, I'm in Fordham?
Yeah.
I said, I already signed up for Brooklyn College. He goes, well, you can get in if you want.
Yeah.
I said, okay, what do I do? He goes, go to the Bursard. You want to go to Rose Hill? There's no housing available. Or do you want to go to Lincoln Center? I said, well, I can't afford the housing anyway. Where's Lincoln Center? He said, where's Lincoln Center? You're in New York, right?
Yeah. Lincoln Center.
He says, the Lincoln Center. 68th Street. I'm like, oh,
famous-
Columbus Circle. He
it's a
said, yeah,
famous
it's a
place.
block off Columbus Circle. I was like, oh, the B train goes there. I have to. He's like, okay. I was like, okay, I'll go to Lincoln Center. I said, what do I do? He goes, go to the Bursaw. They got your name there. I said, okay. He said, goodbye. He hung up the phone. I said, Mom, I got into Lincoln Center. Whatever. She goes, how are you going to pay for that? I said, I don't know. Figure it out.
Yeah.
I went to Fordham. And that's when I learned that there is a whole system, Alex, out there. And you can either be a victim to the system, or you can believe in the system, or like Neo in the Matrix, you can bend reality. And I decided I would see how far I could bend reality.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally that moment in time. Those two events led me to believe that I could bend reality to what I want it to be. And it made me so dangerous, because then I was like, well, I could just start my own magazine. I could just start my own company. I could have Sequoia as an investor. I could do whatever I want. And it just started to snowball. And so once I started to have that mindset that there was a reality available, then like this whole rumination or feeling bad about myself when I did something stupid or I mispronounced somebody's name, I was like, well, who cares? And I just started to view myself as a samurai or a Jedi Knight operating in the world as a Ronin.
It's that teapot community on Twitter. You know that
No, I
place
don't know
on
that.
Twitter, TPOT. And it's like a sort of a life philosophy, but their catchphrase is you can just do things. And it's that idea of you don't need to wait for permission, you don't need to wait for acceptance, you don't need to ask anybody. You can just do whatever you want. And you know, the judgment stuff doesn't matter.
So that's where I have my lack of rumination from, is that they laughed in my face and told me I couldn't do it. And then I bent the spoons. And then I just literally in my mind just thought I was a Jedi Knight. Somewhere around the age of 18 or 19 years old, I was literally convinced that everybody else in the world was a non-Jedi, non-samurai, and I was just a Jedi or samurai, and I could do anything. Because I started running marathons, I became a black belt, and I started my own companies, and I was like, okay, there's all these NPCs, and I can just go do things. Yeah, just go do things. I literally was that before that existed.
Yeah, that's Teapot is relatively
and I think
recent.
it is normal for people to think like, okay, what did I do wrong? Why did he laugh in my face? All this stuff. And I realized the reason he laughed in my face is because he's part of the system.
And the system is often wrong.
It's just a system. Like, the system's wrong, and it's just a system. It's an abstraction. So the whole thing, all of society, is just some crazy abstraction. If you want to go to Japan and ski, you can get on a plane with a one-way ticket, go to Japan and start skiing. And I met this guy, John, who owns the Iwanai Resort. He did that, and then he bought the resort. You can just go do things.
Yeah.
He bought Iwanai. It took 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years to convince the village to let him buy this shut down ski resort.
Yeah.
And now he runs my favorite place in the world, Iwanai. All right, everybody. This has been another exciting episode of This Week in Systems.
Eventful.
Guys, stop ruminating. You just do fucking things. Let's just do things, okay?
That's the deal.
That's it. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't ruminate.